Doing good. I think we're about to start. Got a few coming in. All right, well, it's time to start this morning. Good to see everyone here today. Sunshine. It's a little warm out there. I think it's going to warm up this afternoon. Anyways, before we get started, just a few announcements here. Marcia Sparrow's upcoming surgery, the June 27th. Also, noticing here, Trey, LaMonica's son's going to have see a neurologist, I guess. Is that right? Coming up from.
I'm not sure exactly when, but the knot has went from little size and within just a few weeks it's the size of a golf ball.
Oh, goodness.
So, yeah, they're thinking there's a chance that he may not be getting enough fluid back there on his brain.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. But that's about all I know right now.
Okay, well, hopefully they'll figure out what's going on there. Is there any other announcements that need to be mentioned before? Yeah, Carol. Oh, Joyce Williams is sick this morning. Under the weather there.
I do have a
Yeah.
announcement, a praise report. If my health keeps improving like it is, I'm looking at promotion already at my job.
Oh, well, good deal.
They're wanting to make me a team lead.
Okay.
Y'all can pray that I can continue to build it. You know, if this isn't carpal tunnel, I pray it's not, but get my hands working the way they're supposed to and stuff. And, you know, I'm actually pulling in a lot of hours right now, and it feels good.
Well, good deal. Good deal. That's great news there, Lamont. Thank you. All right. If there's nothing else, Danny, if you would open us in prayer here.
Holy Father, God in heaven, thank you so much for this beautiful Lord's Day, the opportunity to meet here, like my fellow Christians, to worship you. Be with us this morning as we open the Word of Life. Help us to consider it now in our daily lives as we live before you. We know, Father, that you are concerned about not only our spiritual well-being, but our physical. That you care for us each day, Father, that you care. Bless those who have special needs that are having upcoming surgeries, procedures. Bless them and care for them as you can. We know that you are God that has the power to make things happen in their lives that they're not even aware of. Thank you for this congregation. Bless us as we meet here from time to time and to honor you. Bless us this morning as we remember our Savior Jesus Christ. Through him we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, we're going to continue our series we've been doing on Am I My Brother's Keeper? And this morning we're going to talk about dealing with an unbrotherly brother. And that's kind of a difficult subject sometimes. And I don't usually take quotes from people in the world, I guess you'd say, very worldly person. But anyways, Oscar Wilde had made a quote, said, "Always forgive your enemies. Nothing annoys them more." And I kind of thought that's definitely a interesting take on it. But anyways, we have trouble. We have little trouble acting as a brother with people that act as a brother to us, do we? People that are friendly to us, we don't have much trouble acting friendly back to them. But it's a real test in our attitudes when it comes to a brother that's maybe thoughtless or acts in an unbrotherly way, isn't it? That really is a challenge for us. And that's what we're going to look at this morning. If you want to be flipping over Matthew chapter 18. Matthew chapter 18 is our first verse we'll look at this morning, starting in verse 15. Matthew chapter 18, starting in verse 15. And I'm going to read just a couple verses here, 15 through 17. Jesus is speaking here. Matthew chapter 18, starting in verse 15, he says, "Moreover, if your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he hears you, you have gained your brother. But if he will not hear, take with you one or two more, that by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word may be established. And if he refuses to hear them, tell it to the church. But if he refuses even to hear the church, let him be to you like a heathen and a tax collector. We'll stop there. As far as what's one's action, what's our action to be when a brother sins against us? What's the first thing that we are to do? Well, that's what the world would do, isn't it? That's definitely, but is that what we're to do? No, what are we to do? Go to talk to him, one-on-one.
Try to be a peacemaker.
Peacemaker. As far as Brother Busby mentioned there, as far wants to get even, what is the first thing the world want to do? Either get even, or where do they go? Get ahead. A lot of times, what do we, especially at work, what do you hear all the time? So-and-so said this, so-and-so said that. Gossip. A lot of times, when a fellow brother or sister wrongs us, people go to somebody else and tell them, guess what they said? Guess what they did?
Ethics hotline, lady.
Do what now?
Ethics hotline.
Ethics hotline, yeah. But is that the first place? No. First place we go is one-on-one with that person. Nobody else needs to know at that time period. And then if things don't work out, what do you do the second time? Then tell everybody? Post it on Facebook?
You go to like church, to the church.
But no, the second place you go is, what do? Take some friends with you, take some other people, 1 or 2 other people. Not just we don't want to get a whole lot of people involved. Why is this procedure? Why is Jesus giving us this procedure?
You want to resolve a conflict as soon as possible.
As soon as possible, but does everybody need to know?
No.
Not right off, no. No.
Resolve that thing without anybody else knowing about it.
Yep. Yep. Hopefully, the goal is to resolve without anybody else knowing, just the two of you knowing.
The reason you want to take 1 or 2 more is for witnesses.
Yep.
Confirm that he's not doing it.
And then third is then you take it to the church. And then if that brother still doesn't want to change, still acting in the wrong, then,
Let him be anathema.
yep, then you just kind of give up and move on. Carol?
Well, I think I've been offended before, but I evaluate the situation because sometimes it pays just to let it go, consider the source, you know. It's a serious salvation thing. You should come to your brother. I've been offended where I just
Well, and we're going to get into that later in class here. A lot of times, people say or do things, and you just kind of consider the source maybe, or just let it roll off your back there. Because sometimes, if you get back and you sit back and you think about the situation, it may not have been what they intended, or it may not really be that big a deal anyways.
pray about it. And I've told myself a lot of times, being unovercome evil, overcoming.
There you go. That's what we talked about last week, isn't it, Monica?
I can say this lesson is a good lesson for me because I'm actually an example of what's going on. My boyfriend, he was raised a believer, but then he's kind of gotten into it. I don't know if it's real. And the odd thing is, he knows the Bible better than I do. He's read the Bible completely through. He can tell me places in the Bible that I didn't even know about, and he can answer questions that I
work on that relationship. We talked about patience last week, and sometimes it takes some patience, doesn't it? Does this mean that we ought to, going back to Carol's idea there, we ought to make a big issue every time our feelings are hurt?
No, we need to look
No.
at turning some things loose instead of letting it make us miserable.
Yep. What's the phrase that we hear a lot of times? Don't sweat the small stuff. And is that easy to do again there? No. And some people, I think wear their feelings on their shirt sleeves sometimes. It doesn't take much to offend some people, and some people it takes a whole lot to offend. And it's the same as far as the person that's on the other side of it. Sometimes, and with certain people, I can put off a lot of stuff. I can deal with a lot of stuff. And then there's other people I have short patience with. Yep, sometimes the best thing is just to walk away.
On your foot before.
All right. It's often said that we ought to place our very best interpretation on another person's word or action. What do I mean by that? We ought to place our very best interpretation upon another person's word or action.
You do your best. I mean, you do the best you can to your knowledge.
Well, and what I'm talking about here, trying to get the idea across, is when we're dealing with other people, we need to automatically assume they're doing the worst thing first or the best. Give the benefit of the doubt would be probably the better way to put it.
I often tell people there was a movie called Sixth Sense several years ago. That particular child you've probably seen, he could see dead people or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't see dead people, but I tell them I can read people, and I do a very good job of doing it. You know, I can tell where somebody's coming from way upper percentage of the time. I can tell what their motives are, you know, and that kind of, if they're a person that's dishonest in their opinion, you know, if you're not going to go to a person for advice, why do you care about their opinion? You know what I mean?
Yep.
If it's not a person that you would seek advice from, why do you care about their opinion?
Well, and as far as dealing with our fellow brothers and sisters, what should we know about each other's lives? A little bit about each other's background, shouldn't we? You know, that really kind of helps as far as knowing if somebody maybe grew up in the church, didn't grow up in the church, if they grew up in another country, grew up in another part of this country. You know, we all have different ideas then coming on from our background, don't we? And you can understand that a little bit more. I think about people that have different views sometimes than I do. And then I think about their background as far as their educational background, that, well, they just didn't have the same opportunities that I had, and they just don't understand. Now, does that mean if they're in the wrong on something, just let it slide? Well, they grew up different, they just don't understand? No.
Well, you know, sometimes when somebody does something that we feel is offensive, maybe we ought to ask ourselves, what did we do to make them do that?
Yep. Yeah, we don't look at ourselves. Could be something we did.
You're right in the biggest sense. You cannot fight about everything. You'll wear yourself out.
No.
You need to find you some major things that you're immovable on. And you need to learn to let other things go.
And sometimes things come out wrong, don't they? Not the way we intended. I'm not very tech savvy, I'll admit it. And I didn't realize when first started, we have at work instant messaging back and forth, and it's kind of kind of a joke back and forth. When you've got something in all caps, that means you're yelling at somebody. Well, I didn't know that. You know, I don't think I did that much, did I, Adam? But I knew some people that did, and they got called out, didn't they? Why are you yelling at me? Well, that wasn't really the intention. It was just didn't know any better, didn't know any different. And that a lot of times the same when we're talking to somebody. I've said things before, and after I said it, I thought, that came out wrong. That was not how I meant. We've all been there, I think, hadn't we? And we need to be looking at both sides there as far as the person that let it out. When we realize that wasn't what I intended, go to that fellow brother or sister and say, hey, that didn't come out the way I meant it. And the same thing, if somebody talks to you that way and it offends you, go to them one-on-one and say, hey, is this really what you meant?
This is one of those little things, though, Eric, that people tend to overlook when they read the Bible, is that we're called upon to be a particular people different. We shouldn't act like everybody else when something like that happens to us.
Yep.
It's hard because you're human, but you should act different than the world acts with that person when something like that happens. I went to a convenience store the other day, and I got embarrassed is what happened. I had a Coke in my hand, a can, I had it upside down, and it slipped out of my hand, hit the ground. And I really didn't know what to do, and the clerk's right there, and I started to put it back, which I shouldn't have. I started to put it back in the thing because I didn't really know what to do. I know I needed another Coke because that one was shook up. Well, that started a downhill slide. Give me that Coke, she said. She put it behind the counter. Then I went to buy something else, and I kind of added up in my head what it is. I kind of got OCD, so I told her. She acted like she was puzzled. So I told her it's $5. I don't need you to add for me. You know what I mean? You know what I said to her? I said, thank you very much. I hope you have a nice day.
Yep.
That's what I said to her. You know.
Well, and you bring up a good point there as far as how many people in here have worked in the public, worked at McDonald's, worked at Walmart, wherever. Is the public easy to work with? No, I'm talking about the world here. No, there's people, and in her defense, your cashier's defense, what kind of people you think she's dealt with all day?
Not very.
Yep. So her temper was a little short. Did she probably mean it? Well, it's,
She may have. I don't know. I should have tried to put
we're going to think as far as what we're talking about this morning, we're going to give her the benefit of that. She's just having a rough day, and she's not that kind of person.
And I do that. I try to give people benefit.
You know, Eric, everybody doesn't have a gentle voice.
Well, and that's true too. Some people
They
just,
sound rough.
yeah. And
They're not.
I can think of some people that are real sweet that just sometimes the expression on their face when I see them, I think they're mad at me, they're mad at the world. And that's just, they have no control over that. But there again, if we give them the benefit of the doubt, we don't have those issues. Robbie?
One time I run this car auction lot out here, one behind, used to be automated Kentucky Fried Chicken, but anyway. We was taking some cars to Odessa, and they'd give us a sheet, the ones we wanted, well, one of them wasn't on there, and this lady got that one. Well, she walked the yard, she said, that vehicle ain't out here, and I went and told the boss, he said, there's a truck sitting right outside this door here. Said, I want you to take it. Said, that other one's gone. So I went up there and told that lady, I said, go over and check the oil in that truck. Well, she went by where, she said, that ain't the truck I'm looking for. I said, go over there and check the oil in that truck. And she said, that ain't the truck I'm looking for. I said, go check the oil in the truck. You know, it takes her third time for her, you have to talk like that to people sometimes, get them to understand. And I said, that other one's gone. I said, check the oil in that truck.
Well, and there again, bringing it back circle as far as dealing with our fellow brothers and sisters, sometimes when we go to them one-on-one, they don't understand. And then hopefully with just a couple other people, kind of clicks. They understand what's going on. And that's the purpose of then finally the church, and if it doesn't work there, you move on.
But you see, it was my fault, I hollered at her, but you know, she'd have done what she was told to.
Oh,
But I had another guy worked out there for me, and they said, why don't he ever holler at you like that? And he said, I do what he tells me to do.
Jim?
Another thing too, that, like when a person's looking for a church, the attitude of when they walk in the building, how they're treated, how they're spoken to, or whether they're ignored,
Yep.
what have you, that has a lot to do with it.
That definitely has a lot to do with it. And talking about us here as far as fellow brothers and sisters, I'll tell you a story about when I first moved to Beebe. I worshiped over at Greenbrier with my granddad was aged then, and it was just, quite a drive to go back and forth. And then after he passed away, I worshiped still with my uncle there for a while, but then I thought, I need to be somewhere closer to home where I can be active in the church and stuff. It's hard when it's an hour drive away. And I started looking for congregations closer to home. And I may step on some toes here, but I walked in, the first congregation I went to was over at Center Street. And I walked in there, I sat in the back pew, there's some people I knew, sat and talked to. And the only people that talked to me that morning were the two that I was sitting with that I knew. And I thought, this isn't where I need to be. And so I searched around quite a few other congregations. And one Sunday I got up late and I was like, it was too late to travel too much, so I just went back over. It was totally different that Sunday. I don't know if I hit a off day or what, but it's real important that every day, there's no off days when we walk in this building. We do everything we can when somebody we don't know walks in that door to walk up, shake their hand, say, hello, nice to have you here, talk to them. It makes a big difference because we don't know their background. We don't know why a lot of times a stranger has come in the door. They may be dealing with personal issues and feel they need to be close, they need to be making a change in their life. And if we're not there as a welcoming congregation, they're going to go, if they're from the world, they're going to go back to the world. Say, well, that wasn't for me. And a lot of times we only get one shot. We don't get a second shot. I appreciate your comment there, Jim, yes.
You think about how fickle we are sometimes. You look over in Matthew 16 where Jesus was talking to the apostles about the leaven of the Pharisees, and the apostles sat there and said, did we forget to bring bread? I mean, we're no different sometimes. We think that it should be so crystal clear, but then if we stop and look at ourselves, we realize we're not any better. We're in the same boat. Jesus tells us things we think we think we should get it, and then we stop and go, wait a minute, no we don't.
Yep. Yeah.
Sometimes we go to someone else and they have offended us or something, and we think we've made it crystal clear, but they do not accept what we say. So we go back with two friends and we start telling about what had happened, and they look at him, you shouldn't have said that. It means so and so and such and such. And the guy said, oh yeah, I mean, you're right now, We can say things wrong, but we don't even know we're wrong.
Yeah.
That is the other guy.
Yeah, I run into that a lot, and I think we all do. As far as at work, a lot of times I'll send an email to Carrier, tell them something, and I think when I've read through that, it's crystal clear what I'm expecting. And I'll get this email back, where in the world, huh? Sometimes and why do we think that way? Because I know what I'm thinking. It doesn't always come out the way I expect. Yeah. All right, let's look over to 1 Peter chapter 4. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 8. Get a volunteer to read just chapter 4, verse 8 of 1 Peter.
And above all things, have fervent charity among yourselves. Charity shall cover the multitude of sins.
All right, what do you think this is meaning? How would we put that in today's terms? Love one another?
I think if you love somebody and they know you love them, they're more apt to listen to what you have to say and not get upset. They can take the truth better from somebody they know that cares.
Yep, yep. Taking correction from somebody that cares about you is going to mean a whole lot more than somebody you don't know that cares about you. What else? So, ever heard the term love is blind? Does your spouse do things that make you mad sometimes? And sometimes what do? You just overlook it. You just move on. And I think that's too what it's talking about here is overlooking some things. That is, as long as it's not a scriptural issue, just, they're having a bad day, just overlook it and move on. Larry?
Go to your brother or sister. You don't broadcast what they tell you or anything else, whatever's going on.
That's for sure. If you love that person, you're going to do everything you can to keep everybody else from knowing about that situation. Talk about the days of social media that we have. I have some friends that it's quite a few years ago. They went through a nasty divorce, and I knew everything about what was going on in their life without ever doing anything but opening up my Facebook. They were both just every little thing, every dirty deed. And I thought to myself, did you all ever love each other? The last thing in the world I would do is put my dirty laundry out there on Facebook. But that's something that the world does, isn't it? And we're to be different. We're to be different.
The Lord, in his love, that agape love, says, I want nothing but the best for you. And that should apply to everyone, whether you're evil or bad. I mean, I know that's a hard thing for us to, it's very hard for me. It's taken me 72 years to get there. But it's so imperative that we pray for our enemies. Not that they should be triumphant, but that they should change their ways.
There you go. And especially talking about our fellow brothers and sisters. If we love them, we are not going to talk to everybody else about whatever little gossip there is. We're going to just one-on-one. Going to keep that a secret.
Probably referring to Proverbs chapter 10, verse 12, where he says, hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all sin. Like when you're going to gossip, stir up all kinds of stuff.
You know,
If you love them, you're not going to do that.
let's go on here to 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 15. Get a volunteer to read just verse 15 of 1 Thessalonians chapter 5.
See that no one repays anyone evil for evil, but always seek to do good to one another and to everyone.
All right, there again. What does the world do? Seek revenge. Get one up on them. But what are we seeing here? What are we different? Why are we different? There we go. We turn the other cheek. And speaking of turning the other cheek, let's look at, I believe, Matthew chapter 5, verse 44. I think I got this in the right order here. Matthew chapter 5, verse 44. You volunteered to tell us what that says there. What is Jesus saying?
But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spiritually use you and persecute you.
All right. What are we to do? Why are we different than the world?
That's that right there.
Do good to even those that do evil to us. Is that easy? No. No, that's tough. That's tough. I think what makes it so tough is the rest of the world doesn't, that's not even a concept. Not even an idea. Why would I let somebody get one over on me? Why would I even care about them? Why would I pray for them? And I think it was Robbie who mentioned, why do we do that? What's our purpose as Christians here? To love. But am I just trying to make it just so I can make it to heaven alone?
We're trying to spread Jesus' love to show others what Jesus has done for us.
That they can ultimately have what?
Salvation.
Salvation. ultimately, that's what, as a Christian, I want for everyone in this world. That's what I should want, isn't it? Even those that have done evil towards me. People can change, can't they?
Why do I avoid conflict? Because I like peace.
Yeah.
I used to, I'm not, I used to attend other religions before when I was married. And one of those religions was the Assembly of God Church. And I remember, like, they were constantly, in our class, they would constantly say stuff like, well, you know how those Church of Christ people are. And they knew that I was Church of Christ. I mean, just because I was attending the church there with my husband as his wife, I still wasn't able to follow their procedures and their way of worshiping and stuff. And there would be times that I would stand up and I'd be like, because they would try to say, well, the Bible says this, but it really means this, like the speaking in tongue and stuff. And I'd be like, how can you can't change what God asked you to do. And then I would bring up stuff like baptism and stuff to them. And I'm like, how can you say that this is not what God means? He wants you to be baptized, and he wants this from you, and he wants that. And I would point to them places in the Bible. And then one day we were sitting in our class, and they made that comment again, and I just got up and walked out, and I refused to never go back. I went and sat with my son in the nursery till church was over. I wouldn't stay.
Yeah, when we're trying to confront somebody that's wrong, of course, even if we go to them in love and try to understand, eventually sometimes what do we have to do? Just give up, and that's on them. All that we've got to do our best to correct that error for them. Joe?
I often think back to the cross. Jesus called out God the Father. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And that's in his hour of death
Yep.
that he said these things. What a great example for us. And I know that I can't even say I could do that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that's what we should be striving.
There you go, striving towards. Everything we've talked about in class this morning, everything we've talked about this month is difficult, isn't it? It's difficult.
If I see somebody in error and I can take the Bible and let them read to see where they are in error and they still refuse it to change, it's not my fault.
No.
They're rejecting God's word.
Yep. We just have to do the best we can to get the point across, to get them to understand.
Waiting like that, they come back, some of them come back.
Yep.
And see,
Yeah. You never know as far as what the future holds. I have, he's passed away, one of my, I guess he'd be a granduncle, my granddad's brother, lived in Little Rock. And when I was in college, I traveled train back and forth to mom and dad's when I go up home. And he'd pick me up at the train depot there in Little Rock, and we'd go for breakfast and then go eat. And he told me one time, I didn't know much about how his life had turned out financially. I know he'd done real well, but spiritually I didn't really know. And he said, Eric, he said, most of my life, he said, I grew up in the church, went to church until I moved out, got married, and that was the furthest thing from my life. Did not lead a life like that. And if I remember right, he was in his 60s somewhere. He said, I realized that was not right. He said, I got back to church. And thank goodness that he still was alive and had that opportunity to go back. But we never know. We never know. People walk away. I have a family member that has walked away from the church, and I pray for him every day that I hope he comes back. And you never know. It may be later in life. It may be next week. I don't know.
It could take years. My great-grandmother, she was Pentecostal all her life. 98 or 80-something years old, she was baptized in her wheelchair.
Yep.
they baptize her in her wheelchair.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a long time to sink in there. Oh, let's see here.
Sometimes it's hard to be patient.
It is. Patience is tough. What's some basic qualities that will enable one to act brotherly towards a unbrotherly brother? What are some qualities that we need to possess?
Patience.
Patience.
Don't be a judge.
Trying to put our...
Don't try to put yourself above them ever.
There we go. Not trying to be better than them. What kind of quality in our life? Need to be pleasant people, looking out for the best for others, kind, loving.
I think you need to be humble because you don't always need to be right.
Yep, not full of ourselves. Oh, let's look back to 2 Timothy chapter 4. 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 16 and 17. Paul's speaking here. Get a volunteer to read chapter 4, verses 16 and 17, 2 Timothy.
And my first offense, one stood with me, but all forsook me. They did not be charged against me. The Lord stood with me and strengthened me so that the message might be preached fully through me, and that all the Gentiles might hear. Also I was delivered out of the mouth of lions.
All right. What was Paul's attitude towards certain brethren that had let him down?
Like Jesus.
Yep, just like Jesus. He didn't hold it against him, did he? And ultimately, what did it do? He was able to move on, wasn't he? He's able to preach the word to the Gentiles, bring others to Christ. Oh, we're winding up class here. 1 Corinthians chapter 13. I think this will be our last verse that we look at this morning. 1 Corinthians chapter 13. I'm going to read verses 4 through 8. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, starting in verse 4.
Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away.
All right. Which of these characteristics enable one to love or act properly towards an unbrotherly brother? Is there just one of them? All of them, isn't it? This whole section here. Love is long and kind, does not envy. What's another way of saying envy? It does not what? Jealous, not jealous. Love does not parade itself. It is not puffed up. Does not behave rudely. Does not seek its own. Is not provoked. Thinks no evil. There's a difference there between thinking and doing, isn't there? Doesn't even think it. Does not rejoice in inequality, but rejoices in the truth. Bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails, but where there are prophecies, they will fail. Where there are tongues, they will cease. Where there is knowledge, it will vanish away. What's the difference there? Love never fails, but those other things are going to pass away. What's Paul bringing out there? What's the idea he's saying? Love doesn't change, does it? It's eternal. Husbands and wives, does your love change from when you first got married to how many years y'all been married? Oh.
Now it's changed.
That's okay. I have to laugh. We've got just a couple extra minutes. Talk about not knowing how many years you've been married. My parents, I remember their 24th wedding anniversary. They never celebrated anniversaries. They never did cards or anything like that special that I know of for one another. But there was a couple that stood up for them when they got married. They get a small wedding. And anyways, their 24th anniversary, Mom had got this package. This is some kind of silver vase or something. I don't remember what. I remember it was silver. Mom said, why in the world? What is this for? Well, they had got the wrong year. It was 25 years. But Mom and Dad, I remember, for an hour, they were trying to figure out how many years they had been married. That's not the important thing. It's longevity, isn't it? But love each other the same now as you did then when you took those vows. It changes in a way, but you still, it's more mature, but you still want the best for one another. That doesn't change. All right. Final question here to think about as we dismiss in class here in just a moment. All of us have probably acted in an unbrotherly way at some time or another, haven't we? Can you think of an occasion when you wronged a brother and that reaction helped you to correct your mistakes? I just want to think this week if you've wronged somebody or they've wronged you. As we've talked about, first step, go to a brother one-on-one. Right that wrong.
Well, you know, sometimes I think that someone can think that you've done them wrong when nothing wrong has been done. But if they come to you, then you can reach an understanding and it's reconcilable.
You have that opportunity. And anytime we have a chance to talk to a fellow brother and sister one-on-one, what happens more in your relationship? Hopefully it improves and you grow closer. I can think of people I didn't have a close relationship with in this congregation that not necessarily anything wrong or right or anything, just had an opportunity to sit down one-on-one and just talk. And our relationship became a lot closer after that. Joe?
You know, I know that's what we're talking about, Eric, that as a whole, I think church has a hard time doing that. You know, individually I'm talking about. And I'm not being critical, I'm making a statement of fact because I've seen it where brothers and sisters will leave a congregation and I'll call them up and I'll say, hey, we missed you. What's going on? And they'll say, well, I really don't want to talk about it, but, you know, this or that, and, you know, I'm just not going to come back there because it's not very welcoming or not very kind. And I'm going, gosh, that's not the attitude we should have.
No. Well, it's going to bring into next week's class, we're going to talk about extending hospitality to our fellow brother. That'll be our final lesson on this series here. So hopefully everybody will come back and we'll have a good discussion there again. Appreciate your comments, and we'll see you all next week.